wondering how I got into this mix.
Hey, what's up everyone? This is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance Network. I am finally home from the Decentralize Your Life East Coast tour, and it's now been 9 weeks traveling the country, 9 weeks across the United States, visiting 48 cities through Texas, the West Coast, Midwest, and across the East Coast, talking about agorism, self-governance, hosting meditations, volunteering in community gardens, urban farms, feeding the homeless, park cleanups, beach cleanups, all kinds of different activities, showing people what life could be like without involuntary centralized institutions such as government and corporate power, showing people what a life without government could be like when people step up and take care of each other, trying to put those ideas into action, essentially the voluntarist philosophy, but also teaching people about tools and solutions that they can take into their hands and use in their lives, including agorism and counter-economics, as well as focusing on personal development, spiritual development by bringing in the meditation. And I just want to say thank you so much to everybody who's been watching via YouTube and Facebook, who shared the videos, and of course all the people who volunteered in each city to help us find places to speak at, to host the meditations, to talk about these really important ideas, and just in general everybody who has given me an opportunity to share the ideas that I find to be important and valuable. And for anyone who cares enough to listen and to spread the word, thank you so much. And to everybody who bought books and shirts and all that great stuff, it's been very inspiring and affirming to me, letting me know that there is a place for this, there is a purpose for this, that people do find this message valuable. People are interested in personal development and spiritual development as much as they are interested in having physical solutions, practical solutions to defend themselves against criminals in all kinds of areas of their lives, and to protect themselves, and to grow their own food, and to unplug and vacate and decentralize these various systems that don't serve the people. So, and I want to reemphasize with that this tour, we spoke with so many diverse groups of people, young people in high school, college, all the way up to grandmothers in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, and everything in between, all different backgrounds and races and ethnicities, Green Party, Libertarian Party, Ubuntu movement, Zeitgeist movement, apolitical people who just randomly heard about it through friends and had no political awareness and really no awareness of my work or my journalism at all, just came there because they thought it sounded interesting, or maybe they came because of the meditation. Whatever brought them there, these were people that were taking the time and making the effort and spending their energy to spend some time with us so we could discuss important topics, and a lot of new things were created. It wasn't just about having this pat each other on the back, creating an echo chamber. It was speaking to a diverse audience of people who many of them never heard of agorism before, or heard of counter-economics, or even considered these ideas, or thought that there was anything they could do other than voting or violently overthrowing the state. And now they have new ideas. We gave out plenty of zines and pamphlets about agorism and introduced people to this concept. Think about that, 48 cities with, on average, I would say 7 to 10 people on average. Some cities, there was some where we had only one person showed up and we spent an evening with him. There's others where we had 20 to 30 plus people and everything in between. But say maybe 7 to 15 each city on average. And along with that, just so much connection, teaching people about these ideas, teaching them how to incorporate them into their lives. And it was a very powerful experience. So just want to really emphasize that I'm so thankful for the opportunity to do that and to communicate this to people. And as far as growing the agorist movement, the counter-economic movement, the anarchist movement, I definitely feel like I can measure my success. And as activists moving into this time where the state is taking more and more control and trying to interfere in our lives, we have to be real and ask ourselves, what steps are we taking that are actually practical and valuable, and can we measure the effect of them? Is holding a sign having an effect? Is voting leading me closer to my goals? And if not, then being realistic about that and making appropriate changes in order to move into a direction that is effective and is actually helping us reach our goals. So that's what I did with this tour, and I'm so thankful for that. And now I want to tell you guys about the next project that I'm moving into, which I explained to everybody who participated and who visited us on the tour. Got to hear about this first, but now I'm going to share it with you guys who are watching via the internet. And this is what I call a holistic or honest self-assessment. Oh, one more thing. If you did get to see us on the road for the Decentralize Your Life tour, we are going to be recording, and when I say we, I mean me, my partner Miriam, Johnny, and Jeff are my two housemates here at the Freethinker House. We are going to be recording the entire version of the tour event, from the meditation to Johnny and Jeffers' talk to my presentation, in its entirety, and we'll be releasing that in the coming weeks. We'll also be releasing a highlight reel of the entire tour, so look forward to that. So the holistic self-assessment, or the honest self-assessment, comes from the end of mine and John Vibe's most recent book, Manifesto of the Free Humans, which we see as a blueprint, a model for a way to help people exit, vacate, decentralize from the state and corporate powers and to create more freedom in their lives, both in a practical sense, getting out of these systems, but also in a more personal development, spiritual sense. So I'm going to read to you this last part of this chapter in the book that introduces this concept of a self-assessment, and that we mention a couple different times in this book. And then I'll talk to you guys about what that looks like and what that's going to look like when I release this later on this year, at the beginning of 2018. So we wrote, "The evolution of consciousness is absolutely necessary for true, lasting freedom to be achieved. We boldly stand by our positions and arguments made in this series, but the reality is that none of the solutions presented will succeed if the broken and confused people of this world refuse to do the necessary internal work for individual healing to transpire. The insecurities, doubts, and fears will differ person to person, so an honest self-examination is needed to decipher where to begin your healing process." And I'm going to stop right there before I continue. So right there we say, the insecurities, doubts, and fears are different from person to person, so an honest self-examination, being honest with yourself, truthful with yourself, examining your own self and your own actions and your own behaviors and your life in general, is needed to decipher where to begin your healing process, where to focus on, where are the roots of your insecurities, your flaws, your self-limiting thoughts. How can you get to the root of those experiences and heal them so that you can become the best version of yourself, and through that recognize there's no need for a master, encourage other people to see the same thing and move on towards a stateless society is the idea. So I'll just continue with what we wrote here so you get a fuller picture. "If we want to heal the deeper root causes which allow violence to be perpetuated among our species, we must be willing to face ourselves. If we fail to recognize healing and personal growth as a vital part of the fight for a more free, ethical world, we are setting ourselves up for failure." So yeah, that's where this idea of a self-assessment, honest self-assessment, or what we're likely going to call a holistic self-assessment, because it goes along with our message of holistic anarchism or holistic activism, which we just put out a video, myself and John Vibes. If you haven't watched it, it's on the YouTube channel, it's on our Facebook videos. Check that out if you want to hear us discuss this concept of holistic activism and holistic anarchism. But generally it means looking at all areas of your life, not just the way that you view politics or the way that you view government or the economy or morality. Those things are important, but in general, looking at all the different areas of your life, the economy, education, food production system, food distribution systems, all these different systems that create problems in our world, and they also are a part of statism, and we should seek to remove ourselves from them and extricate ourselves from their workings as often as possible. And we do this through agorism and counter-economics, which is what we talk about in this book. But we also do this in a spiritual sense by getting connected to ourselves, having this honest self-assessment, getting to know our own limitations and the barriers that we've set out for ourselves. So when John and I wrote that, and when we mentioned that a couple times in the book, it makes sense to me. I know what I mean when I write honest self-assessment, right? But as we were on tour and I was looking at this, I was reading it and rereading the book and realized maybe that part is a little bit too generalized. It's too general. Somebody might read it and take it in, but without taking it too seriously and just like, yeah, okay, honest self-assessment. Sure, I'll work on that someday. But they don't really know what it looks like or where to start and these kind of things. And it can be overwhelming. So for me, what I want to do then is to create this and to work on something. It's not going to be a full-fledged book like the most recent one. It's going to be maybe 10 to 15 to 20 pages at most. It's going to be more of a workbook style thing that you can write in, meant for each individual to look at for their own personal use, not for me to look at or for anybody else to look at and to judge, but for each individual to take themselves through this process, this holistic, honest self-assessment, and go through different areas of your life and helpfully guide people to see the inconsistencies in their stated goals and desires and in their actual actions and in the reality that they create. So the goal, again, is not judgment. It's not about shaming anybody and telling them how to live their lives. It's actually going to be meant for a very broad audience. It will probably reference that it's a complementary element to Manifesto of the Free Humans, but one need not know my work or these books or really even anything about anarchism or self-governance or activism or any of this stuff to benefit from this. That's the goal, is to be able to hit a much wider audience, because I believe it's not just about getting people to understand these philosophies. I think we can get them to understand the philosophies by living them and showing them, being an example, but we can also get them to understand their own value and their own worth so that they can come to the conclusion on their own that they do not need a ruler or somebody to make their decisions for them, and that each of us as powerful, beautiful individuals are capable of making decisions and ruling over our communities better than anybody else can from an outside source, and that each person is capable of ruling over themselves. We don't need other people to do that. And the way you help people see that message is to teach them self-love. And that may sound cheesy or corny to some anarchists out there, some radical activists, but the truth is, until each person is capable of that, their politics are going to come from a place of anger, from a place of hate. And I don't think that there is I do know there's a place for righteous anger, but I don't hate, because I think that hatred, it shifts us in the wrong energy. And even the people that I'm angry at or that I see as quote-unquote the enemy, I come from a place of love, of wanting to expose them to restore balance, or to give them an opportunity to repent, I guess you could say. But I do not want to go into the place of darkness, anger, and hate, and to become the people that I fight. So I believe we have to stay heart-centered whenever possible. And we do this by self-examination, by getting at the root of where we come from. Because you may understand the issues, but if you're coming from a place of anger and you're using it as an excuse to feed into that darkness that you may have for completely unrelated reasons, then you are also a part of the problem. And if it's just an excuse for you to want to lash out, then I think that's part of the problem as well. But we should also ask ourselves, why do we get trapped in these situations where we can become conditioned and propagandized? And some people will wake up, this is how many of us describe it. They'll say, wow, I've gone my whole life and I believed what I was taught in school or what my parents told me or my priests or my teachers. And now all of a sudden I'm looking at things differently, and it's so crazy. I've never realized this was going on. People literally feel like they were, or they literally were lied to and propagandized. And when they recognize that, it can be a difficult thing. Not everybody is ready for that. Maybe they go towards a place of apathy or just doubting themselves. And so we have to build each other up. And this holistic self-assessment will be a part of that process. It will be a guide to take individuals to seeing who they are, to first identify with who they see as themselves, and to look at their goals and the principles that guide them. Many people don't even know what a principle is, let alone what principles guide them. And so they are being able to be manipulated and again, conditioned and propagandized by politicians every 2 to 4 years, instead of being rooted in themselves and philosophical understanding of their moral compass and what is right and what is wrong and what is ethical. So it's important for us to understand that, to get to know who we are. That's the first step. Who am I? Answer that question. Spend some time thinking about all the characteristics and the traits that make up who you are as an individual. And that should take a good time. I'm just going to give you the first couple steps here. Then after that, it would be identifying your goals. Now that you think you know who you are on a deeper level, what are the goals of this person that is you? What are you trying to do here? Why are you here on this planet? And then, when you start to think about what you want to do, what are you willing to do to get there? What is off the table? What is permissible in your world? And that's where principles come in, understanding your principles. So spend some time on that. Then from there, you start to look at, is it possible? How is this happening? And you say you have these goals, you understand what you're going to use, what moral compass you're going to use to guide yourself, but what are you actually doing? What does reality look like? And so you start to look at your habits and identify the various characteristics and the traits of your daily life from morning till night, and your behaviors, your vices, all of these habitual things that you do, and what does that look like? And from there you can compare your habits, your daily routine, and your monthly routine and your yearly routine and your reality to your stated goals, short-term and long-term, and you can see if you're actually in alignment there, and if not, you can start to address that. So this holistic, honest self-assessment is going to be a way to process people through that and to take them through this, give them an opportunity to see these things for themselves. As I said, they're not going to be sending it back to me for me to judge. It's going to be for each individual to stop and say, wow, I have this stated goal. I want to leave the world a better place. But then when I look at my habits, I am very, dirty. I'm wasteful. I'm, just destructive. I'm not thinking about anybody else but myself in this present moment. I'm not thinking about the planet or my children's children or anything like that. So the idea of being able to have those habits on a daily basis and get to the future goal of leaving the place better, it's not in alignment. And two other great examples that I've been giving to people on the tour about this concept is the March Against Monsanto and the Federal Reserve rallies around the country against the Federal Reserve System. So in both examples, you had major support bases around the country. People hosted March Against Monsanto rallies all around the world. There were marches against the Federal Reserve and rallies at all the different banks around the country for several years. And these things are big in the beginning, and they tend to kind of taper off over time and get less and less support. So the idea, though, is people are going to the streets and marching against Monsanto to raise awareness about the crony, government relationship with corporations that we see with Monsanto and the revolving door, or maybe their association with pesticides, or their worries about GMOs, or generally their concerns about the bees or the environment, or just Monsanto and their history of being involved in chemical warfare. All kinds of ways that brought people out there. And there was maybe some people interested in pushing certain bills or just awareness in general. It brought a lot of people out. They were able to connect and see people for the first time and get their voice heard for the first time and get out there and scream and march, and it felt good. But afterwards, many people, after having these successful rallies, they chose to go out and celebrate by going out to eat, and they're sitting down and they're eating their GMO corn chips and their traditionally grown food sprayed with pesticides coming from the Monsanto biotech industrial farming complex, and they're supporting the same problems that they claim to be against. And I'm not here to judge, I'm not attacking, I'm just saying this is not thinking in terms of holistic, and you're not thinking about the outcome of your actions. You're thinking about, well, it feels good to identify the problems, and that's what we tend to do as people in the world, and especially as activists. We can identify the problems we see and the things we don't like, and we go to ask somebody to fix it, whether that's asking government to pass a law or telling people to vote or just changing something in your community or changing your own behavior. We identify a problem, and then we tend to take an action if we think that that's possible. But many people aren't thinking holistically, so they're taking actions focused on the external objects and what they're doing in the world, as opposed to what their own actions are doing and how they're contributing to that. Same idea, the Federal Reserve rallies and marches. People spend a lot of money and time organizing these events around the country, flying in speakers, building stages, getting permits, doing all kinds of things to raise awareness, passing out flyers to people, DVDs everywhere. And they did a lot of it because at that time, there wasn't many options. Bitcoin was kind of new. Cryptocurrency was just fairly new. But people were out there, they're supporting, and they're buying and the Fed shirts, and they're paying with Federal Reserve notes. The whole thing is being run and paid for by the very system that they're complaining about and talking against. I'm not here again to judge. It's just about recognizing, wow, we're not really working outside that system. Before, people only had options like silver, gold, precious metals, or alternative currencies that you could create, barter networks. But now we have, in addition to that, we have cryptocurrency and things of that sort. That would be thinking holistically. You see the problem, but you don't support it, you don't participate in it. Same thing with March Against Monsanto. Encourage people to go grow their own food and get localized in that area. So you see the problem, but you identify it and you look at it holistically. So this process, this holistic self-assessment, is just going to take you through that on the individual basis, and we're going to kind of have different guides and prompts that will take people through the process. It's still being worked out. I hope to have it out by early 2018. I will have it out by early 2018. I'm going to spend the next couple months working on that. I don't have many speaking events coming up or anything planned as of yet, so most of my energy is going to be going towards writing. Look for an essay on what is holistic anarchism and the intersection of relational anarchism with Sterling Lujan. And Sterling will also be working with me to develop some of the psychological elements of this holistic self-assessment. So look out for all that. Thank you guys for the support on the tour, and I hope you enjoyed this preview of what I'll be working on next. Please subscribe to the channel, follow us on Facebook, all that good stuff. Also, we're on Instagram, yada, yada, yada. Thank you guys for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace. Peace.